Planning an RV trip can be overwhelming. Today we're going to share the one secret you can do in 5 minutes, takes away all the stress, that makes it super easy, not complicated, and will make life easier with your significant.
We can't do that.
Oh, we can at least give some tips to make it easier and fight less.
We can definitely do that.
We're Marissa, Nathan, Hensley, and JJ. We sold our house in 2015 and moved into an RV full-time to live a life of less junk, more journey. Life is a journey. Let go and get going.
Okay, so we don't have the magic 5-second or 5-minute secret to never stress about RV planning again. But in almost 6 years of full-time RVing and being a lot of different places, we have got sort of a flow that we use to plan places to go with our RV. We're going to talk about what do we use to plan RV trips, how far out we plan, and ultimately we want to just take some of this stress. We can't take all the stress away, but we want to take some of this stress away when it comes to planning your next RV trip.
To show you how we plan our RV routes, we're going to go back to our Michigan route that we did last fall-ish and show you guys how we did that and use that travel route as an example.
So when you're planning your next RV trip, I think one of the first questions is, well, what do I use to plan the trip? Do I just use a pen and paper? Do I use a spreadsheet? Do I use an app? We have gravitated toward apps. 3 of the top apps that kind of stand out to me that I've tried off and on. One of the big 3 is Road Trippers. All these have pros and cons. I think the big pro for this, it's a sleek interface. They do the best job out of anything we've used of finding things along your route to do on the side of the road. Like they totally rule it as far as that, because there's also reviews about the museum or the attraction on the way. They just do a fantastic job of seeing your route and planning it. But to us, some of the things they're missing that are a big deal. You can't, when you're planning your route, you really can't favorite things in a way or create things in a way, pin things in a way ahead of time. It's like once you have a plan, you put it on the map and then it'll show you stuff along the way. So for us, we might have 25, 50, 75 different things we think we might do. We want an easy way on that same map to see those, and then we'll plan our trip around that. It doesn't work with that flow quite. And the second thing, unless they've changed this, is if we like to boondock, we can't pinpoint like a GPS location for that boondocking location. That could have changed. I haven't checked it in a while. So you're stuck pinpointing what they have in their system. Number 2 on the list, and this one's just a really close second. They're almost there on it to overtake our number 1 that we use, is RV Trip Wizard. Now this has gotten better every year. It does a better job as far as like pinpointing exact GPS locations. I think you can do that now, but it still doesn't feel like a planner. It feels like you have a plan, you punch it in, how much fuel you're going to use, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. It also, this is probably the biggest perk, it ties also into the campground reviews that are awesome in the system. It can tie into their GPS that they have. The big thing RV Trip Wizard's missing, unless they've added this recently, is you still can't favorite things. So it's like you still can't pick out all those things you might do. You just have to show it what you will do and then plan the route along the way. For us, we like to brainstorm. We like to dream. We like to plug in way more stuff than we'll ever do. We want notes with that. And then we want to sort of plan our route around that in one interface if we can. And the interface we found that works for us is creating your own custom map within Google Maps. You go to maps.google.com, you click on the little hamburger looking thing at the top left, you go down, you pick your places, I think is what it's called, and then it will open up your maps and you can create a new map from there. So the way we frame this video is to take how far out we plan and get closer and closer and closer until the launch date. And so we plan 12 months out, and then 6 months out, 2 months out, 2 weeks out.
And how we plan our trips as full-time RVers, keep in mind, may be a little bit different if you are planning a trip for a shorter stint, a vacation. You know, you might have a couple weeks here and there. You definitely would want to probably book way further in advance and make sure that you have the most activities done in those 2 weeks than we would as full-time RVers with more flexibility.
Okay, so big picture, zooming way out, 12 months out. I felt kind of good. And this might seem like something that is easy to think about, but 12 months out, the big thing we start looking at is we're chasing 70 degrees, right? So like if we're looking to do something in the summer, we're looking to go north. If we're looking to do something in the winter, we're looking to go pretty typically south. If we're looking to do something in the fall, we did this for Maine, I know. So a lot of times in the fall, you're looking to go way north and then work your way south with the weather. In the spring, it's the opposite. This is kind of what we end up with in Florida, for instance. We'll start south and we'll start working our way north in the spring.
And that helps us narrow down specific locations because the first question you might have is, how do you even know where to go? How do you pick? There's so many amazing places to visit. And how do you even start with picking your favorite? Especially when you start out and you're just getting to travel. I mean, you want to go everywhere and see everything. So I think just following those specific guidelines actually help us narrow down, okay, let's look at the weather. Let's look at what piques our interest, and we work from there.
I think also in this 12-month span or perspective or big picture, whatever you want to say, I think sometimes you do need to reserve things a year out. We don't do it very often. But a good example is the Balloon Fiesta. So that booked up. Whew, how fast did that book up this last time?
Within hours, right?
I think it was like 3 hours or less. It was pretty nuts. So if you know you want to go somewhere and you're thinking we might be in that area, sometimes it's better to go ahead and book the event or book the place. If you're trying to get to a national park or a state park or somewhere that's epic, and you're like, oh, it's still 12 months out, but I think we might be there. Just the minute it becomes available, you book it. And then you eat the cancellation costs if you don't go, or you change it around if you have to. You book it with the intention to use it, not just to waste the time frame. But it's better to book it and make adjustments later than have no shot at getting it later on.
There are certain campgrounds that are in the state national parks that they will book up within 12 months to the minute advance.
Yeah.
So if there are those epic places you want to go to, we book those first, and then we work the rest of our travels around those big events, those big locations that are our priority for the route.
And I think it's a good time to address too, like what we've seen in the last year and a half, as far as how COVID's impacting things and more people coming on the road and availability. We will be honest and say that it is harder to get into things than it used to be. But it was already trending that way. Balloon Fiesta example, like our first time we went to that, 5 years ago-ish?
Yeah.
We rolled up, had no reservations, and said, hey, we're here. They're like, oh, cool, just go pick a spot. We just went and grabbed one, and now, like, it's selling out in 3 hours or less,
Right.
The day it comes available. So it was already, even before COVID, it was already booking up faster and faster and faster. So it was already trending that way, and I think this just accelerated. That's not to say don't plan an RV trip. But
I think it's just saying that the RV lifestyle secret is out. That
I would say
being
so.
in an RV takes you to the most amazing places, and it's the most affordable way to get to those places. And so since that secret is out, and then like Nathan mentioned, with COVID hitting, it's allowing people to have their own space and be comfortable traveling, doing so in that space. I mean, it's definitely been a little bit harder, and you may need to book out a little bit sooner.
Even if you're planning for summer, you might even be thinking, well, what do we need to be thinking about next summer?
Yeah.
Because we don't know. I don't know what 2022 is going to look like, but 2021 still looks like it's going to be a busy RVing year. But yeah, at the 6 month point, we go from, let's say 12 months out, we're like, well, let's just do, maybe Canada, Michigan, Wisconsin, something in that area. I think we'd even talked about doing like a Canada route, was kind of in the discussion too, because Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, is close to that. But as it got within 6 months, we said, no, let's just narrow it down to Michigan. Obviously, we didn't go into Canada or do anything there for the most part. So
Because the border was closed.
Yeah, the border was closed. So we saw like one vehicle going in every hour or something like that. And there were trucks with supplies and stuff. So yeah, we narrowed it down. I think at 6 months, you kind of narrow it down a little bit more to maybe a more specific area. You start thinking about the actual route. For us, our routes are like 2 or 3 months. If yours is 2 weeks, if you're going on a vacation, or maybe it is months, you're at this point, you're kind of thinking, what would that look like? Especially if we're following the weather and doing our thing for that area. So that's 12 months, that's 6 months, but now 2 months out is where it starts to get fun. That's not that you couldn't do this earlier than this, but it seems like about 2 months out, we start to get a little more pumped about the route, a little more pumped about the area, and Marissa starts doing what's most exciting to her.
The planning part. So my favorite part is picking out all the fun things to do and pinning those on our Google map. So I start the research process. One of the first things I do, obviously, is ask you guys. I send out a post and say, what do you do in this area? So social media is a great way to get people's recommendations, or to even look at hashtags and look at what locals are doing. One of my favorite things to do is look at Pinterest, because those are going to be your hidden gems. They just are the best blogs full of like where to go, where to eat. It's kind of all planned out based on just search where you want to go. For instance, in Michigan, Mackinac or the Upper Peninsula, and there will be tons of different ways to see that. There's also YouTube videos, TripAdvisor.
From the more technical side of things, I like to go into the area and then I just honestly type in things to do near me on Google Maps. So let's say we're going to be in the Mackinac area. I go in and type that in, and it's pretty cool. Google does a great job of it. They'll show you everything within like a 15, 20 mile area, and they'll give you the star rating, they'll give you how many reviews, because I think that plays into it. We've been in an area before, we're like, let's see what there is to eat around here. Yeah. And all of a sudden this cafe we've never heard of pops up. It's got like a review 4.8 with like 5,237 reviews, and then the next closest cafe has like 200 reviews. We're like, okay, well, we're going to go there.
Yeah. And if you're really into hiking, I'll also do the same thing with All Trails. So you can get onto All Trails and look at the hikes that are near you and see which ones are the most popular and read the reviews, see if it's a good option for you.
In the pinning process, like you'll see, this is our Michigan map. I say, Marissa, if there's something, it's like a can't miss spot, like make it red. And so she'll make that spot red. And then sometimes we'll even go above and beyond and make things that are places to eat, use like a food icon, places to hike, you got a hiking icon. So you can do these icons. This is the step within Google Maps that is not really done as well or at all in a lot of the other travel planning things. That is critical for us, because we need to, I think part of the reason this is so overwhelming is if you use Road Trippers or some of these other ones, you're like, oh man, but I don't know exactly where I want to go. And so you're punching it in, you're looking at the route it's giving you, and it's great, but it becomes overwhelming. Versus Google Maps, it's kind of like you just kind of, you throw it all out onto the map, but then you can see it all, and you can start narrowing it down. But also in this 2-month out phase is where I start looking at the map. She picks where we go, I figure out how we're going to do it. And I said, well, Marissa, we've got a giant red, area here, and we've got, let's say, 6 or 8 blue things. I said, we're definitely going to go to this area, right? So once we know that, and if we can kind of figure out the time frame, and let's say it's a really high traffic, hard to get into, and that's what we did with Michigan. So we started booking Mackinac Island. We started booking some of the state parks that we knew we wanted to go to. Again, we're grabbing these 2-week reservations if we can and trying to overlay things and get it all placed out. But we don't really do that until we've already had a chance to blah that stuff onto the Google Maps, because that helps us visually see kind of what's most important.
Where our priorities lie.
Yes.
The map doesn't lie. So when we look at the map and we see all the things, all the pins kind of tell us where's the best place to be camping, because that's where the most area of all the things we have pinned on the map are.
I think at this point too, like when it comes to booking these places, our priority as far as what we're looking for. So let's say we have an area with a red dot. We have 5 or 6 of the blue ones, or whatever. We know we're going to this area, right? We're looking to stay in state parks. We're looking to stay in national parks. And that's not always easy. But at this 2-month mark, we do start looking for that and start watching for cancellations and that kind of thing. Those are really our highest priority. In Michigan, there wasn't a lot of this, but our second priority falls down to like boondocking. I give preference to things that have flexibility too. So boondocking obviously has flexibility. There's little to no, some of them maybe you got to put something in advance. For the most part, you can show up, you can leave whenever you need to. Even the state parks and national parks, they're pretty flexible as far as cancellations or moving around your reservations as far as the fees they charge. And I think that's why our third favorite place has really kind of emerged just in the last year or two, is Thousand Trails. There's pros and cons with Thousand Trails. Some of you love it, some of you hate it. If you Google it or look on YouTube, you'll see the same thing. Some people love it, some people hate it. For us, it's a really good fallback option, or an option where if we want to be social with other families, for instance, or people we've met who also have Thousand Trails, you'll see a lot of the same people in Thousand Trails as you go along. And so that's not our first choice where we book the Thousand Trails and hope there's something near it. We're looking for these destinations, and if there happens to be a Thousand Trails close to there, and like we strike out on state parks, national parks, boondocking, because it's free, we pay a yearly membership. It's not technically free, but because there's flexibility there in reserving and moving and all that, it is up there on our priority list, probably underneath the other options. Our fourth favorite option is like county parks, city parks. Man, some of those have been like hidden gems.
Absolutely. And affordable.
gems.
Great locations. Yeah, they're definitely not to be looked over. We've really enjoyed that option.
And then really lastly on our list, and that doesn't mean we don't ever do it, because we mentioned Mackinac was an instance. Sometimes there's epic ones you want to stay at. But private parks, really, to us, because if you're full-time especially and you're paying $60, $70, $80 a night at private parks, it adds up really fast. So really, they're more of a treat. Or I think the Mackinac one was like $70 a night, wasn't it? It was over $50, I know.
That was our treat.
It wasn't, yeah, sure. It was a treat. So we're looking at those last, but we do stay in private parks as well. Okay, so at this point, 12 months out, we know the area of the country we're going into. 6 months out, we've narrowed that down to a state, Michigan. 2 months out, we've even started booking a few things because we know the state parks we want to be into. We booked Mackinac. We've started booking things. Yeah, so 2 weeks out, we do the same strategy now as we did in the Airstream. It's just longer spans. So instead of like only doing a week in advance, we do like 2 weeks in advance. So we show up to a place. If we love it, we might see if we can expand it from 1 week to 2 or whatever. If we're ready to move on, we start looking for the next place for 2 weeks out or ish at that point. We don't do that for everywhere. If it's a high traffic area, if it's a peak season, I think the time of year comes into play for this flexibility, but we did want to mention this flexible wing it option that we use at certain times. Again, peak season, peak parks, probably tough to do, especially if you have a 40-foot fifth wheel. The big picture to me with RV trip planning is find a way to just get it out of your head and get it onto something. For us, Google Maps has worked. For you, a piece of paper might work, a spreadsheet might work. I think that's one of the big reasons it's so overwhelming, is because you have all these thoughts, all these places, all these figures, all these numbers in your head. Figure out a way to get those out and be able to see those in an organized manner.
There are multiple ways to trip plan. I think you just have to figure out how your brain works. All of our brains work so differently. And I might have that one secret that they wanted. I might have this one secret. Do you want to know what the secret is?
I'm trying to think of what it is. I don't know what it is.
I think it's just your mindset that you're just going out and you're making memories as a family.
Okay.
So for me, I feel like I get really overwhelmed because I want to see everything. I want to do everything. But honestly, I just have to like bring myself back to the whole reason I'm doing this is just for us to have a good time and make memories as a family. So, you know, I know it gets super overwhelming because we want to go and do and see everything. But once I just remind myself of that, I think it kind of takes all the trip planning stress away and helps me just enjoy being in the moment. And that's what's most important, honestly. So I do have the secret after all.
There you go. So we're going to give you guys the Michigan map, but that map is also on Patreon with Team Journey, along with a bunch of other maps. So we share travel maps with Team Journey on Patreon. We also have a very helpful community. I get it. There's all kinds of follow-up questions for that.
They're amazing. They help us out all the time.
Man. We get help from them as well. We have also done a Q&A. I know at least one specifically on travel planning. So if you want more information about travel planning, you can find the Q&A.
And we do those monthly.
We do. On Patreon, we do those monthly as well. Tons of additional value there. A great community. We would love to see you guys over there. I hope this provided some great value for you guys and taken at least a little bit of that stress out of your next RV planning trip. Until next video, let go, get going.